In terms of F1 Bingo wildcard picks, who had Williams topping the timesheets in preseason testing this year? Yes, I know, like kids being told not to eat yellow snow, it's hammered into us that preseason testing times mean nothing, and anyone paying any attention to them is an idiot fan who knows nothing about the sport. But come on, if you disregard Sauber as an F1 team, which you probably should, Williams were plum last in 2024 and never really looked like finishing any higher than that. Under the current regulations, Ferrari and Red Bull have topped the testing times pretty comfortably, but here is a plucky Williams team who have just evolved past spreadsheets, topping the times and generally impressing everyone, to the point where one team have predicted them to get a race win this season. So are Williams set to be a huge surprise in 2025? Well, let's check it out. So, next weekend, F1 will descend on the rightful home of its first race of the season. As a kid playing F1 World Grand Prix on the Nintendo 64, trying to keep myself occupied between race weekends, the Australian Grand Prix always has been and always will be the correct place to start an F1 season in my opinion. With the 2025 season being the latest evolution of the better regionalised calendar, which is aimed at reducing the insane amount of air miles teams rack up over the course of a year. The paddock will then head to Asia for the Chinese and Japanese Grand Prix, before making its first trip of the year to the Middle East. The better planned calendar also means less painfully long breaks throughout the season, which is obviously a massive improvement. But heading to the Australian Grand Prix, the competitive order is a bit of an unknown. There have been some tentative predictions that McLaren could be the early leaders, then maybe Ferrari and Red Bull and Mercedes in a close-knit pack, but it's too close to call an obvious leader. Behind them, the midfield is the midfield, apart from Aston Martin, who may be worse off actually. Sauber is even more last than they were last season, that's a pretty safe prediction. But then there is Williams. They looked good during testing, and not just because of that timesheet topping lap from Carlos Sainz. Sainz's teammate, Alexander Albon, also set a fast lap time on the C4 tyre on the last day of preseason testing, just a tenth of a second off George Russell, who set the fastest lap of the day. It was in a straight line that Williams made the most of its lap time, which isn't too surprising. They've been excellent at high-speed running in the current technical regulations. Its weakness is in the low-speed corners, where the Williams has to slow down a significant amount more than most other cars to make a corner. Williams were also much weaker the harder the tyre compound got, especially in the long runs, which is probably an issue with tyre warm-up. Even on his chart-topping fastest lap, which was on an easier-to-warm-up soft compound, Carlos Sainz said he was held back by the tyres not warming up to the optimal temperature. So while Williams might look to have a weakness in long running on hard compounds, the surprisingly cold desert of Bahrain in February probably had an impact on that, and isn't a set of conditions that will be repeated during the actual season. The big positive note though is that only Alpine and Williams were able to beat their lap times from last year's qualifying in Bahrain, and very clearly so. Sainz's lap was 0.873 seconds faster than Albon's best time from the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. His time would actually have been good enough for second on the grid at last season's opening race. But of course, we aren't idiots and we know that times mean nothing. So how else do we know that Williams could surprise everyone in 2025? Well, it's the vibe test that the rest of the grid offer on their opposition. That's right, we're told that while we aren't allowed to pay any attention to the times, we can dissect the vague comments made about the competitive order from Williams' competitors. So let's do that. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella noted Williams' standout performance in preseason testing in Bahrain. In an interview after testing, Stella spoke about how the convergence of the regulations means that the gap between the top and bottom is closing even further this season. Asked if anyone in particular had caught his eye, Stella said, "I've seen that in terms of one lap pace, in addition to the top four that seem to be certainly Williams, very competitive. I'm really stating the obvious because I'm sure everyone will have seen the data. They are the same data that I look at." What impressed him the most was Williams' strength in Bahrain's tricky second sector. It's interesting that, for instance, Williams were very strong in the second sector, which is not only a sector of braking acceleration. It's also a sector with a couple of medium-speed corners. I think this should say that Williams might have improved in that area. Stella also said that there could be 5 or 6 teams fighting at the front of the grid, and he specifically called out Williams as one of those teams he expects to be in the battle. Lando Norris also echoed that sentiment, saying he thinks 5 or 6 teams can win a race in 2025 and called out Williams in particular as one of those teams. So Williams passes the vibes test of the rest of the grid, and they've set some pretty impressive times. Does that mean then that Carlos Sainz will win a race at Williams before Lewis Hamilton wins a race at Ferrari? Now wouldn't that be a story and a half? But even in Netflix's wildest dreams, that seems a push. But before I talk about it more, if you enjoy the content we bring you and want to catch all the news and analysis of the 2025 F1 season, then make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. It really helps us out, so thank you very much if you have. Obviously, the last team you expect to be backing up McLaren's outlandish claims of Williams winning races in 2025 is Williams themselves. James Vowles has always been extremely clear that his mandate is not to find competitiveness in the current regulations. Williams are rebuilding how the entire team operates, with an eye on the 2026 regulations as a chance to make serious gains. Now, Williams are a historically significant team in Formula One with a history of success. They're one of only 5 teams to have over 100 Grand Prix wins, and the spirit of Frank Williams will always be a part of that team. A return to that incredible past could be on the cards for the future, but this season at least, Williams are being very clear that they do not agree with the McLaren assessment of their performance. When asked about that fastest lap, Carlos Sainz said, "You can manipulate your lap time by 5 seconds, so to be 1/10 or 2/10 ahead, it means nothing to us." As I said earlier, it is in the race runs that Williams looked weakest, and that was the thing that Carlos Sainz picked out as an inhibiting factor for the team this season. Where that gap really opens is in the race runs. That's where the downforce and everything tends to make a big difference, and that's where we've, or at least me with the team, I'm putting a lot of focus in trying to improve the race performance in this car, concluded Sainz. Pressed on whether he harbored confidence that Williams is leading the group behind last season's top 4 teams, Sainz responded, "No. Already today you can see Haas, Aston and Racing Bulls doing some strong long runs, and it shows it's going to be tight still. Because it's within 2 temps in testing, you cannot tell who's taken out the last 10 kilos of fuel or not. And 10 kilos is 4 temps. So that's a tricky bit. So yeah, it's impossible." Fernando Alonso, whose Aston Martin team looked like the biggest losers from the winter break, also rubbished McLaren's claims that 5 or 6 teams could win a race in 2025. Alonso at times has come close to a win with Aston Martin. That Monaco Grand Prix where Aston Martin royally screwed him with a bad tyre choice stands out. But he has been clear that any suggestion that his team, or another team outside the top 4, winning a race in 2025 is a ridiculous prediction. When Norris was in the 5th or 6th team, he was saying that only one team will win all the races. This is a normal, confident speech, the veteran Spaniard dismissed. It is good for him, but I think it is going to be difficult. Reliability is so good these days. There are not many retirements. There are not many incidents. Strategies are quite defined. Even on Thursday before coming to the Grand Prix, you know exactly it is going to be 1 stop, 2 stops, which tyre you'll use. Everything is so perfect now that it's difficult to change or to make a race unpredictable. It has to be crazy weather or something. As we saw last season in Brazil, even when the weather is crazy, a team outside of the top 4 winning is almost impossible. If anyone is going to do it this season though, Williams could be the team to do it, and what a result that would be. Do you like the look of the Williams team for 2025? Do you think they could top the midfield? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out our merch store at f1reverse.com for some sweet motorsport-inspired apparel. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.